Hi everyone, this is Aisha Arningwali. I am student in Rehan AI Teachers Training Institute. So today my topic is learning from failure, how to setbacks, how to setbacks and turning setbacks into opportunities. So I have conversation with ChatGPT. Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing really well, thank you. How about you? How's your day going so far?
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm really glad to hear that. If there's anything specific you want to chat about, or if you just feel like catching up, I'm all ears.
Yeah, so today my topic is learning from failure, turning setbacks into opportunities.
Absolutely, I'd love to. So, one thing I often think about is how failure, even though it feels really tough in the moment, is kind of like a compass. It points us to where we need to grow. What kind of setbacks or failures have you been thinking about turning around?
Okay, my first question is how do you personally define failure and has that definition evolved over time?
Oh, that's a really interesting one. I think for me, I used to define failure as just an outcome I didn't want, basically a negative result. But over time, I've come to see it more as a signal, like a chance to learn, pivot, or adjust. So now it's more about the process and what I take from it rather than just a final verdict.
Yeah. So tell me, what mistake mindset shifts are necessary to view failure as a learning opportunity rather than a defeat?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think a key shift is moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. So instead of thinking, I failed, I'm just not good at this, you think, I failed, so what can I learn from this and how can I improve? Another shift is seeing setbacks as temporary, like it's not your identity, just a moment in time. And also embracing curiosity, asking, what can this teach me? Instead of just, why did this happen to me?
Yeah. So my next question is how can individuals develop resilience after experiencing major setbacks?
Yeah, resilience is so crucial. I think one big way is by building a support network, people you trust who can remind you of your strengths. Another part is practicing self compassion, being kind to yourself in those moments, and then setting small, achievable goals after a setback so you get those quick wins that build confidence back up.
So, what role does self awareness play in learning from failure?
Yeah, self awareness is really key. When you're self aware, you can pause and reflect on what happened, like what choices led to that outcome, how you reacted, and what you can do differently next time. It kind of helps you take ownership instead of just feeling like a victim of circumstance.
Yeah. So, what lessons did you extract from your most challenging setbacks?
You know, I think one of the biggest lessons for me was realizing how important it is to ask for help. I used to see setbacks as something I had to handle on my own, but once I opened up, got feedback, and leaned on others, I realized I could move forward way faster. So that was a real game changer for me.
Yeah. So, can you share a professional failure that significantly shaped your career path?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a time early on when a big project I was leading completely fell apart, like a major client deal didn't go through. I felt really stuck, but that forced me to pivot, learn about risk management, and become a lot more proactive. And honestly, it gave me this hunger to step into leadership roles later, which was a huge turning point.
So, how do you ensure that you don't repeat the same mistakes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I make it a point to do a really thorough post-mortem after big projects. So I look at what went wrong, what I could control, and what external factors played a role. I also keep a little personal checklist of red flags, like did I fully validate the assumptions or did I leave enough buffer time? So it's kind of a mix of self-check and keeping communication open with the team.
In what ways has failure contributed to your personal or professional growth?
I think failure has been a huge catalyst for growth. Personally, it's taught me to stay humble and really understand my limits. Professionally, it pushed me to be more adaptable because once you fall, you kind of have to figure out new strategies. And it also gave me a real appreciation for persistence, just staying in the game even when it's tough.
Yeah. So, my another question is that how do you ensure that you don't repeat the same mistakes?
Yeah, so what I do is I make a deliberate habit of reflecting after every major project. I write down what went well, what didn't, and most importantly, what patterns I notice. I also set reminders to revisit those notes so I keep them top of mind. And I get feedback from peers too, just to stay accountable and keep improving.
So, what practical steps can someone take immediately after experiencing failure?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first step is to pause and give yourself some space. Don't rush into a new decision. Then journal or just reflect on what happened so you can identify the real cause. After that, reach out to a mentor or a trusted colleague for perspective. And then finally, just take one small action, something concrete, so you start rebuilding momentum right away.
How can setbacks be strategically turned into new opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think setbacks can be like a redirection if you let them. For instance, sometimes a failed project reveals a gap in the market or a new skill you need to develop. And once you pivot, you might find a niche you wouldn't have considered otherwise. So it's really about staying open and curious about those shifts.
Yeah. So, what tools or frameworks do you use to analyze and learn from mistakes?
Yeah, so I often use a few different things. One is a simple SWOT analysis, looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to break things down. I also use root cause analysis, kind of like the five whys technique. So I keep asking, why did this happen until I get to the root? And of course, I'll map out action plans with clear steps. So I don't just analyze, but I also put what I learn into practice.
How important is goal reassessment after a failure?
Oh, it's really important. After a failure, you kind of need to step back and ask yourself if those original goals still align with what you really want. So, reassessing helps you adjust expectations, set new milestones, and make sure you're still moving in a direction that fits you, even if the path has shifted a bit.
So, how can leaders create a culture when failure is seen as a part of innovation?
Yeah, that's a really powerful thing for leaders to do. I think the first step is modeling vulnerability. Like when leaders share their own failures openly, it kind of normalizes it. Then you celebrate small risks, even if they don't succeed, so people feel safe experimenting. And you build in reflection time. Like after every project, you pause and learn. So it's a continuous cycle, not just a one off.
Yeah. So, tell me, what is the best way to handle failure within a team environment?
I think one of the best ways is to create a culture of psychological safety. So when everyone knows they can speak up without fear of blame, failure becomes a shared learning opportunity. You have to make space for open discussions, no finger pointing, and you focus on what the team can take away together. That builds trust and it turns every setback into a chance to grow.
So, how can organizations encourage employees to take risks without fear of failure?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think organizations can encourage it by explicitly rewarding risk taking, even when it doesn't pan out. They can set up mentorship programs so people have guidance, and they should create a space where failures are discussed in learning sessions. So it's not taboo, but part of progress.
So, what leadership qualities are essential when guiding others through setbacks?
Yeah, I think a few really stand out. First, empathy, being able to understand how people feel in those moments. Then, transparency, so being open about both the risks and the lessons. And also, resilience, because a leader has to stay steady and focused, even when things get tough, so the team can keep moving forward.
Yeah. So, how do you stay motivated after repeated failure?
Yeah, I think for me, it really helps to reconnect with my why, like the bigger purpose behind what I'm doing. I also set really small, achievable goals so I get a sense of progress. And I remind myself that every setback is just a step, it's not the end. And I also lean on supportive people, those who kind of lift me up and encourage me to keep going.
How can failure improve decision making skills in the long run?
Yeah, definitely. When a team faces failure, it kind of forces them to step back, reflect, and share different perspectives. So they learn to ask better questions, weigh risks more carefully, and trust each other more. So in the long run, it actually makes the decision making stronger because people are more thoughtful and more open to different angles.
So, what long term opportunities can arise from short term setbacks?
Yeah, I think that's really about perspective. When you're in a setback, it often feels like a dead end, but if you zoom out, you can see that it's just a detour. So by staying curious, staying flexible, and looking for small possibilities, a short term failure can actually plant the seeds for a bigger opportunity down the road.
Yeah. So, tell me, what advice would you give to someone afraid of taking risks due to fear of failure?
Yeah, I'd say start small. You don't have to take a huge leap all at once. Test your idea on a smaller scale so the stakes are lower. And remind yourself that failure doesn't define you, it's just data. Every step is a chance to learn. And surround yourself with people who encourage you so you have that safety net to keep you going.
Thank you so much. Having a great conversation with you. Next time, I'll come with another topic.
Of course, I'm really glad we got to talk about all this. Yeah, whenever you're ready, we can dive into a new topic. Take care, and I'll be here.
Take care too.